From tech to the broader market, however, David Stockman is warning investors that this week's comeback isn't going to hold. David served as the director of the Office of Management and Budget under President Reagan. He joins us now on the phone. David, always great to have you.
Glad to be with you.
You have been predicting an epic downturn on this show for years now. Why do you believe it's finally here?
Well, I think if you're a rational investor, you need only two words in your vocabulary: Trump and sell. It should be absolutely clear by now that Donald Trump is an economic lunatic and that he's playing with fire at the very top of an aging expansion. We're in month 112, 8 months from the record, and he's doing three things that are going to blow the place sky high.
All right, what are the three things? And then I have a comment.
Okay, one, he's attacking the Fed for going too quick when it's been dithering for 8 years. The funds rate at 2.13% is still below inflation. It's been there for 8 years. They're way behind the curve, and to have him attacking is insanity. That's first. Second, we're in the 11th year of an expansion, and they have just blown the federal deficit sky high. We're going to borrow $1.2 trillion, 6% of GDP. This year, year 11, we've never been there before. Last time we were in this expansion this long, we had a surplus. Third, the trade war is not remotely rational, and it's not going to end in a negotiation. We're going to have in January $500 billion of Chinese imports being taxed at 25%. And that, is going to hit the whole goods economy with inflation like you've never seen before, because China supplies about 30% of what of the goods in the categories we import. So it's 1.7 trillion worth of stuff going to be hit with a 25% price increase, because that will be the price umbrella. And the Fed is going to be in an even worse, corner when that inflation hits the economy next year than it is now.
All right, well, so David, let me ask you this.
You can't survive. This bull market and this GDP peaked, months ago. It cannot survive the triple whammy that Donald Trump is bringing down to bear on a old, aging, weak expansion.
All right, but you didn't bring up the fact that the market is looking at earnings right now, corporate profits, and it's happy with what it sees. It thinks that there are parts of the economy that are very strong at this point, and it also is seeing companies start to reap the rewards of tax benefits. What about that? And is that what's driving, for example, today's rally?
I don't think so. I mean, that's just Wall Street propaganda. Earnings this quarter, when it's over, will be $124 on an apples-to-apples GAAP basis for the S&P 500, $124 a share without the one-time tax increase. 4 years ago, it was $106 a share. That's 4% over 4 years. That isn't a booming economy. You don't, price the stock market at 22 times earnings on 4% growth at the end of a business cycle. I mean, it's just, this is just propaganda to get people to buy stock when there is no risk-reward equation left that makes any sense this late in the cycle.
David, you outlined three things, and two of them I somewhat agree with. The trade war and the spending at this time of the cycle seems odd to me. When you talked about pressuring the Fed, isn't it true that every president except for Obama, and we'll get back to that in a second, has pressured the Fed? There's stories about Ronald Reagan meeting with Paul Volcker and basically telling him he was fired if he raised rates. Obama didn't have to threaten the Fed because Obama had zero rates the whole time. Isn't this not a new thing? It's just a more public thing?
Well, it's far more public, and the mythology about Reagan is untrue. I was there. I know what he thought. He was not happy that Volcker had to raise rates to double digits because we had double-digit inflation, but he went along with it. He let Volcker do the job. He brought down the inflation, and at least for a while we had a pretty healthy economic recovery. That isn't what Trump is doing. I mean, Trump is an ignoramus on monetary policy. He has no idea of what he's talking about. He tweets randomly, and this attack on the Fed is the final straw as far as I'm concerned.
Hey, David. Jeff Kilber here in Chicago. And certainly in the month of October, we saw a downdraft of 7% in the S&P 500. We know President Trump still has about a 30% cushion since he's been elected. But my question to you is, how low can the S&P 500 go if everything you're talking about comes to fruition?
Well, no one has outlawed recessions. We're within a year or two of one. When it happens, the earnings I just mentioned, $124, $130 a share, will drop to 75 or 80. Put whatever multiple you want on it. That says the fair value of the S&P going into the next recession is well below 2,000, 1,500, way below where we are today. Now, if you think, the economic gods have outlawed recessions, that this business cycle will last forever and we're in some kind of world of nirvana, then, go ahead with the valuation you have today. Otherwise, it makes no sense.
That's a 40% drop, David. A 40% drop you're looking for in the next recession?
Yeah, it happened in the last recession was 55%. In the recession before, the NASDAQ 100 was 80%. Of course, that happens every recession. Somehow there is just no memory on Wall Street because, it's kind of a trade by the minute and the hour, and it's the chart monkeys trying to find the 200 DMA. That doesn't explain where we're going to be next year, the year after. We're going to be in a recession, and we're going to have another market correction, which will be pretty brutal.
All right, David Stockman, thank you so much for calling in. Great to talk to you.
Okay.
Meantime.